All right, let's now talk about presentation 8, which is chapter 12. I'm going to do what I usually do, and you're going to stop seeing me. Here we go. All right, so presentation 8, in a typical class, which is not online, I would say, you need presentation 8. In some cases, we're not going to require it. So for this, it really just does depend on the kind of class where you'd actually have to have a presentation aid when you are presenting your speech in class. Um, so let's talk about it anyway, because it's something that you need to learn to do. I would say, in our future, in your future, in your careers, if you're in sales, you may need to learn to create a great presentation. If you work with Amazon, they've actually banned presentation in meetings, so you may not see it at all. But anyway, we should learn how to create them. So let's go for it. So in this chapter, I'm going to talk about 4 different things. The value of presentation aids, so why aids are important, the types of aids that are out there, and of course, computer-based presentation aids like PowerPoint and Google Slides and things like that, Keynote, yeah, and then using these presentations effectively. Okay, so let's quickly go over it. So why do we have aids, right? Now you've probably seen a lot of my visual aids, my presentation aids here, and I take a lot of time and create good presentation aids because I want you to pay attention, right? If you see a couple photos that interest you, you're likely to at least be here, like mentally here, right? Physically, I know that I got you, but what about is your brain here, right? So I think for me to maintain attention, to gain your attention and to maintain it, I use presentation aids. I also think it helps in your understanding. If I have visuals that complement what I'm talking about, it definitely helps you understand. Not only does it help you understand, it also helps you um, remember, right? So you're seeing 3 photos here. If you have a speech on, poverty and, in Africa, and you want to talk about malnourishment, you bring in a visual that connects those things for you. Or if you're giving a speech on how to learn Spanish or what Spanish looks like, in written form, go ahead and put some photos there. If it's a speech on primary colors, and you want people to remember all the colors of the rainbow, have some sort of mnemonic device to help them do that. Okay, so that's the value of aids. It also, illustrates, it can also help you with illustrating steps and processes, right? Like how to make pasta, or how power is generated, or how a bottle is capped, or how wine is made, or whatever, or how a building is constructed, or how a room is redesigned, right? If you have a visual depiction of those sequences, um, it really makes a difference, right? And how are we going to do it? You're going to use some kind of presentation aid. Sometimes presentation aids also help with organizing ideas, right? So if you have a chronological sort of, from the time man was not really a man, like, almost like we used to walk on 4 feet and then moved up to walking straight upright and using tools and things like that. You can show, a sequence, or, something about, you were 3 years old, then you were 8, and then you were 12, and now you're 18, right? I mean, again, that's the same kind of thing, that it kind of shows you um chronological, you know just through photos, right? And so this is what we're talking about. This is why aids are used. And when you actually see something while hearing it too, I think it just kind of connects the dots in your head. Okay, so what are the different types of aids? There are so many, right? I mean, you can use audio, and audio is great. In some cases, like you want someone to hear a specific voice or to establish a particular mood, then go ahead and use audio. Um, Objects, if this is a in-person, lecture and it's a demonstration and you bring something to show people, that obviously that helps, right? A model of something helps. And then sometimes you bring in people and, you could do a tennis or a dance demonstration, right? Images, if it's a visual thing and you can put something up on the board, you have like drawings and photos and maps and charts and graphs and all of that stuff. Of course, you can use a lot of all of this electronically as well, but you can actually draw something and put it up there as well. If it's a smaller class, it's easier to see. You could use text, but when you use a lot of like text, right, the stuff that you see on PowerPoint, if it's like covered with just words, people are not really paying attention to you, right? They're focused on the text. So, that's that. And then, of course, there's videos, right, which can be clips from movies and ads and recordings, things like that. Now, there is a art to using all of this stuff, right? If you use audio and you use too much audio or people can't really hear or there's just too much going on, it's not a great aid. If you bring in an object and if it's too big and you can't pass it around or people can't really see it, it's pointless. If you bring in people to dance and stuff like in a 5-minute speech, if you have a dance demonstration and things like that, you've lost your time, and you've really lost time to talk about important things. And that would really be a bad idea to then do that if it's a small 5-minute speech. Images are great if they're online. I think it's better if it's something that you've drawn and stuck on the board. It's hard to see. Passing it around, hard to see. So that's that. Text, I would say, of course, we're talking about PowerPoint here, and the focus should never be the presentation aid. The focus should be your speech. So if it's too much about your PowerPoint and too little about your speech, you got a problem. All right. If it's too much about the text on the presentation aid, you have a problem, right? Use it effectively, right? You have 10 words there, make an impact instead of having people read what's on the PowerPoint, because then would they pay attention to you or look at the PowerPoint, right? And I think video clips are quite effective if there's context to it. Um, but if it's too long, it's problematic as well. So, you can, some of the ways you can share data. So look at that one that says oranges sold. It gives you a very clear indication, right? In literally in 3 seconds, I can know that in April oranges were sold the most, right? So the picture, really just speaks 1,000 words, right? This kind of depiction is what we call an infographic. And you tend to see that, I know I got my first job creating an infographic. So it is important. So you can see pie charts here, line charts here. You can say a table here. So all of that stuff can be used in your presentations, and a lot of it can be online. Um, Of course, you want to be careful of the kind of fonts that you would use. Um, you know, Sans serif is kind of is the one that most people prefer. So that's what I've seen most people use, but there are other fonts out there. Some are very hard to see, and I would absolutely not recommend them on any kind of PowerPoint. Right? It's just almost impossible to see. It affects just you know vision, like you can't really see it, and so that's a problem. All right, and then I am going to share with you some editorial symbols, like this I think is something we use in journalism quite a bit. And you may see some kind of markings when you have to present by an editor, right? And so I just wanted to share that there are different kinds of editorial symbols out there. Again, I thought that was just informative, just something for you to know. that if you work in the creative world or you work in journalism, these are the kind of things that you may see. So in computer-based presentations, right, whether it's PowerPoint or Keynote, Google Slides, Prezi, I mean, there are so many great computer-based programs out there for presentations. I would say any image that you use should be from Unsplash or Pixar, or basically places where images are free to download and to use. So Unsplash has so many of them, and they're all free. So you want to make sure that you use things that are copyright free, right? And I tend to use a lot of pictures because I think it kind of reinforces my verbal messages, things that I talk about. And of course, you may have a great presentation, but you want to remember to look at the audience and not the presentation all the time. Because if you're looking at the presentation, you've really lost your audience, okay? Practicing with the presentation is very important. So you learn to maintain contact and you get used to that. And in general, just passing objects around or bringing something dangerous into the classroom, like all of that stuff, or not just the classroom. I mean, it could be work, right? It's just it's not okay. Anything illegal, don't bring in marijuana, things like that. Like it's just kind of weird, But computer-based presentations, PowerPoint, Keynote, Google Slides, you should probably be familiar with them if you're not. There are some rules to creating good presentations, using no more than 4 lines of text, using bullet points, using the same font and color of the font and the size of the font throughout your presentations. The whole presentation, every slide should be kind of the same. That's something to remember. Well, I know that there are different ideas that people have on what looks better, darker font and lighter background, or darker background and lighter font. But in my experience, I have seen mostly light backgrounds with darker fonts that work well. Use dramatic fonts only when you really want to create a different kind of impact, and please don't use it on the entire presentation. And then choose your colors wisely, right? So red and orange are all about warmth. Green and blue are all about calmness. Don't try and use red and green together according to designers. I'm not a designer. It's something that is something you should know. Okay, so that is chapter 12, and I'm going to move on to chapter 13, which is speaking to inform. So let's get started on that. We'll keep it short because we're going to spend a lot of time on the outlines outside of this video here. But there are different kinds of speech topics, and you should start thinking about what your informative speech topic would be. Would it be on an object? Would it be on a process? Would it be about a person? Would it be about an event? Or would it be about an idea, right? So think about the kinds of speech topics that are out there, and what do you care about, and what do you think is relevant to your audience, and then plan to choose one of them. So we're going to talk about in this little chapter how to enhance audience understanding, maintain their interest, and help them recall your information. So this kind of looks a little bit scary, right? But it's not. It's absolutely not. So let's talk a little bit about it. Okay, so let's say your topic was about a specific object. And let's say, what would that be? Let's say my object is my phone. All right. So we can, we need to obviously present information about my phone. And so what would be the organizational pattern? You can choose. So it could be a topical pattern, it could be a spatial pattern, or it could be a chronological pattern, right? I'm just giving you an example. So let's say for my phone, my topic would be The pros and cons of iPhone 12, right? It's a topic, and I can talk about, or how to use the iPhone 12, right? Again, I can talk about simplest to the most complex things about this phone. I could talk about spatial arrangement as well of this object. So I could talk about it in an interesting way. I could say where to buy an iPhone 12, and you could talk about, from it could be at the Apple store, or it could be online, or it could be at the T-Mobile store, whatever it is, right? You can talk about Apple's my phone as a chronological. So, you know, first there was iPhone, I'm just making this up, iPhone 5, then there was 6, then there was 8, then there was 10, and now there's 12, right? So chronological. It's a timeline. So look at what I've done. I can talk about any of these three topics. I shouldn't talk about all of them in my speech. I should just probably talk about one, focus on one, and then, just take it all the way. All right, let's talk about the second one, and that is a procedure, right? So this is another kind of informative speech where I can talk about how something works or to describe a process. All right, so let's say, buying a quality used car is an example. So let's look at it chronological, right? So how do you go about buying a quality used car, right? You ask a few friends about what brand, you do some research, and then you go visit a showroom, you test drive a car, and you go ahead and buy it, the process of even buying it. There's a lot of conversation here, but it is a chronological sequence of events that take place, right? So I can organize my speech in that way. I can come up with something else, like, okay, let's say we say topical, right? And buying, we're still going to talk about the same topic. So buy a quality used car, topical. What can we talk about? We can talk about, why buying a quality used car is a great idea, right? Versus buying a new car, which, as soon as it leaves the parking lot, it's dropped $10,000, right? So that's, you could talk about it like that. It could even be complexity, right? So you can talk about stuff that is simple versus stuff that's hard. So you can, within buying a quality used car topic, my complexity conversation is how to negotiate the price of a quality used car. And I can now, it could be a process, and I could actually explain how things work. Okay, let's move on to the third one, and that's people. So in this particular one, you've chosen a particular person, or, famous person, or your grandmother, I don't know. So, and then you want to talk about that. You choose what your organizational pattern could be. So let's say if it's chronological, you could talk about, from the time your grandmother was born, and she grew up, and how she met your grandfather, and how she had these kids, and or had a career, whatever, and up to now, right? And so that could be chronological. It could also be topical, like, okay, let's go back to grandma. You could say how my grandmother makes the best cake, right? Or empanadas, or what, tostadas, whatever it is, right? So that is a topical, organizational pattern for that exact same topic. Okay. Let's move on. There's events. That's another informative topic. You can talk about an event that may have happened or will happen. So let's say we could talk about COVID-19, right? So that's a very, very recent event, and we can talk about that. So let's look at the organizational pattern and say chronological. All right, when was it discovered? In China, and then, how other countries got it, and then we got it, blah, 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 right? Chronological. You talk about topical. Well, the crazy, COVID-19 pandemic, just a topic, right? Or it could say, the contagious or infectious virus, that changed the world. Topical. All right, and then you can talk about spatial, right? That's something, we could talk about how different parts of the country have been impacted by this virus. So we're talking about, different places, um, or which is within California, which areas have been affected the most and how it spread. Okay, something like, I'm just making it up, but like, you know what I'm talking about here, right? I'm using a topic, just picking up any topic, and I'm throwing it into a particular organizational pattern, and then focusing on that and elaborating on that. And that's what we need to do. Okay, the last one there, another idea of informative speech topic is using ideas, so some more abstract information. So um, let's say, we talk about Buddhism, right? Or yeah, let's start there. So the topical could be, what, the Buddhism, the religion, is a religion or not. Okay, I'm just making it up. Or Buddhism, and its beliefs, right? So that could be topical. It could also be complex. You start with very simple Buddhism, and then you really get deeper into what it actually means, the tenets, and all of that, and you know get deeper into it. So what am I doing here? I have just given you 5 different areas of thought, for your informative speeches. And you can choose one of the topics out of the 5 that you see there, right? And then based on that, you can come up with, a topic idea, that works for you. And that is like all the examples that I gave you, right? And then whatever idea you come up with, you start to create your little concept map, and you realize what your interest area is in, or what you know most about, or what is most relevant, or what's easiest to find information about. And then you throw it into one of these organizational patterns, either topical, spatial, or chronological, or complex, or, whatever it is that you want to fit it in, right? Okay, so that's that. A few more things to talk about here, right? So using strategies to enhance audience understanding, to make sure that people understand your speech. You want to be very clear in sharing that information. You want to make sure that you involve your audience. And if the ideas are complex, you try to simplify them. Okay. So, how do you ensure clarity, right? Well, you preview your ideas, the transitions, the previews, the internal summaries, all the stuff. Stay on message. Okay. Bring something new to the table so listeners are actually engaged in the process of learning. Give them something to think about, and you can do that by actually introducing something that they don't know about, right? Then they're paying attention. And then if it's something complex and scientific or difficult to understand or just heavy, like reincarnation or something like that, you try to clarify those ideas and use, different kind of analogies and descriptions and things like that that help enhance audience understanding. And then you also have to find ways to maintain their interest, right? Never assume that they are interested. You have to find ways to get them interested at every point, at every second. Okay, so you have to motivate them all the time. Also, provide information that's current, that is more relatable, that people care about, just makes it really easy to maintain interest if you have, information that is current. And, if you have a surprise statistic here and there, I mean, that kind of stuff really helps too. So use the unexpected, but of course, use it ethically. And then tell a good story, with your examples and facts and anecdotes and experiences, right? Tell a good story, include conflict or action or suspense or something that keeps them wanting to continue to listen to you. So when you build that interest and they're paying attention to you, now you start to realize that they're going to remember. right? So here are some of the strategies to help them remember and recall. If they were asked about your speech the next day, what did they remember? Did they remember anything, right? And so there are 4 strategies here that you can think of. One is the more internal summaries and transitions you have, the more it'll stick in your head. Okay. So when you have signposts, like my first point, my second point, you have little reviews and summary of your key ideas, it makes a very big difference. Okay. Second thing is, even when you're doing those transitions, keep them short. Keep your ideas short. Most of your ideas, even your main ideas, should be like literally like 1 or 2 sentence summaries, no more. Use some gestures. It breaks it up, and it helps with remembering things. And then don't give them too much information. You know why? Because they're not going to remember a lot of that information if you give them too much of it. So don't overwhelm your audience. Reinforce ideas, reinforce them verbally. Okay. You could kind of say, like, this is the most important point, So if you reinforce that, then people tend to remember it. So those kind of things help as well. Okay, so we have now covered chapters 12 and 13 in this video. And again, I have to remind you, please go back, look at your notes again, read your textbook, read these 2 chapters, so you're ready for your quiz, and you're also ready for your speeches. Okay? All right then, that's that.